آمنت به ودفع ما وقعت فيه فافعل بي ذلك وإن لم نستوجبه منك يا ذا العرش العظيم.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد وآله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept your prayers in this early morning and your supplications, inshallah. Continuing on some reflections on the dua of Imam Ali alayhi salam, dua Sabah, a beautiful supplication from the Imam that, in fact, when we look at the du'as of Ahlul Bayt, this one or the du'as of Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam, it is amazing how a human can reach such a level of wisdom in their understanding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And despite the wisdom and despite the beauty, intellectual beauty in the supplication, at the same time you have the eloquence in it and the beauty of the words that he has presented, beautifully rhyming and sounding. The dua, as we got to the part where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala presents himself to us by himself. Ya man dalla ala dhatihi bidhatih. Imam calling upon him, he says, or the one who guides to him, to his that, his essence, by himself. This part came after the fourth statement in the dua, in fact, regarding the nur that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala وَشَعْشَعَ ضِيَاءَ الشَّمْسِ بِنُورِ تَأَجُّجِ. When the morning starts, the most obvious thing that we see is obviously the light of the sun rays. شَعْشَعَ ضِيَاءَ الشَّمْسِ. And then that is somehow, that statement may lead some people to think of him as the physical light that we see. Perhaps in Ayat al-Nur also, some people reading the ayah, Allah nuru samawati wal ardi, in Surah al-Nur, Ayat al-Nur, that God is the light of the heavens and the earth, they may tend to believe, or their minds may go towards the physical light. And so that there's no mistake in that regard. And when the Imam says, Ya man dalla ala dhatihi bidhatih, one who is guiding us, one who is displaying or demonstrating himself or his essence through his essence. Some may go towards the physical light that he spoke of, the Imam spoke of in the previous sentence. Then immediately the Imam says, وَتَنَزَّهَ عَنْ مُجَانَسَةِ مَخْلُوقَاتِهِ. As much as we want to understand him, and we understand how he is close and he is with everything, at the same time, immediately the Imam brings the tanzih. Tanzih is to in our mind acknowledge that he is far from certain things. For instance, in here he says وَتَنَزَّهَ, he is above, he is far from being from the jins, from the type of his what he has created. The mujanasa is basically to be from the same jins, and or to be almost like a twin of something. Here, when we when he spoke of the light, so that nobody thinks that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the physical light that he created, or the physical sun that he created, or is like that, then the Imam brings this statement that he is far from that. He transcends, he is higher and above that creature that he created, whether it be the sun or the light, or anything physical in the world of the material world that we are familiar with. None of that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is like. He is لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ, as he says in the Holy Quran. Nothing is like him. He is not like any of what he has created. وَتَنَزَّهَ عَنْ مُجَانَسَةِ مَخْلُوقَاتِهِ وَجَلَّ عَنْ مُلَائَمَةِ كَيْفِيَّاتِهِ. Also, the next line, the Imam also brings the Jalal of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Jalla, we also use it for the when it is obviously about the honor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that he is exalted, he is higher, similar to the tanzih, that he is not he is not to be understood or to be limited in the kayfiyatih. Here the ha in kayfiyatih, they have given different suggestions, most probably referring to the makhluk, kayfiyatul makhluk, because he is تنزه عن مجانسة مخلوقاته, he is high above the being of that same quality or same type as his makhluk. Then he is saying he is exalted to be of the to have the conditions of that the creature that he has created. Kayfiyat is when we say, and it comes from the kayf, how. In Arabic, when you say how is something, you say kayf. And so when you for example, in the story of the cow that Bani Israel had to slaughter in Surah Al-Baqarah, they kept on asking of the conditions, the type, the color, the perhaps the what it would be used for, and so on. So kayfiyat could refer to the physical kayfiyat, or could refer to other attributes besides the physical kayfiyat, physical conditions. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is above all of that. وَجَلَّ عَنْ مُلَائَمَةِ كَيْفِيَّاتِهِ. Don't look at the makhluqat and describe them and then try and describe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the same descriptions or same attributes, or think that it is similar in that sense. He is exalted, he is higher than that. وَجَلَّ عَنْ مُلَائَمَةِ. For example, to think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is big, and think of, when we say he is great, and think of perhaps the universe. Okay. The universe is makhluk, it's created. So that greatness that you're describing the universe, this adjective belongs to a physical creature. You cannot think of that and then think of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that sense. You cannot, certain questions cannot be asked about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For example, to think that he has different conditions. For example, one day he is happy, God forbid, wal-ayadu billah. Now, then we he is sad, for example. Later on, he is sad. One day he is sad. These are kayfiyat of makhluk. These are conditions and perhaps qualities, conditions, circumstances that are surrounding the creatures, the makhluqat. He is above that. يا من قرب من خطرات الظنون. Then, this tanzih, as at the same time as speaking of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, trying to understand him, at the same time remembering that he is above, he is exalted, he is he is far from certain things. That is now repeated in his nearness and his distance, that he is near. In what sense? يا من قرب من خطرات الظنون. Khatarat are what come, ideas, thoughts that come to the heart and to the mind. And dhunun refers to again, ideas that could be as high as certainty, or could be far from that. It could be simply just assumptions. And in the Holy Quran, it's been used in both senses. That sometimes the best word I would use for that is to believe. What do I mean by that? In English, sometimes we say, I believe. And when we say, I believe, we're speaking of the faith and belief of in something that is certain. But sometimes you use that and you're referring to believing in something that is a possibility or an assumption. It's almost like saying, I assume, and then one higher level, I believe. Okay, but still, it's not certainty, it's not yaqeen. So in some cases, you might use it in that sense, or in some cases, you might use it when you believe in something and it's pretty much certain. For example, in the story of Nabiullah Yunus ala nabina wa alayhi salam, he says, فظن أن لن نقدر عليه وظنوا إذ ذهب مغاضبا فظن. He believed, that thought that came to him, it was a belief of uncertainty. He had yaqeen, in fact, that this is the case. He did not think that he would be subject to the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and yet do that and leave his people and be angered by his people and leave them. He did not do that subjecting himself to the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He would never. Rather, he believed that God would not make things constraint on him. In other words, God would not punish him. Therefore, he left, and so on. So that is one type of dhann, and we have other types where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Inna dhanna la yughni min al-haqqi shay'a." That kind of dhann. So khatarat al-dhunun are the thoughts, the ideas that comes to mind. He is near in that sense. However, we have to understand that there are four types of khatarat. Our scholars, they often speak of four types of khatarat that come to mind. What I mean by that is, again, khatarat are thoughts that come to mind without certain effort, without us thinking. It's just an idea that comes to one's mind, and that has four categories. They say they are either the Rabbani, either divine inspirations, if you want to call them, or Malaki, or from angels, inspired by angels. And or the third level, and this is we come from the two best and then two not so good, which is the nafsani, the ideas that are from oneself, from his desires, affected by his or her desires, and then we have the The last one being shaitani wal billah, affected by shaitan, and we call that waswas or wasawis al-shaitan, the whispering of shaitan. So when it comes to any idea that comes to mind, we have to understand that it's not every idea. Some people think, any idea that comes to my mind, that it is inspiration. I was inspired. You have some politicians that were inspired, and they thought they were inspired by God. They didn't realize that it was waswas of shaitan. So we have to understand that there are ideas that come to mind that are caused by shaitan. There are ideas that come to mind that may be affected by our desires, our nafs, and nafsul ammara here we're referring to. Or there are some that are malaki and inspirations from angels, or even in the level of those who are purified, it would be from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the level of ma'sumin and so on. Those who protected, purified their thoughts and their minds and their hearts to the point that the knowledge comes to them directly from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's a beautiful poem in Arabic that he says, the poet says, I complained to my teacher that I am not memorizing. I try to learn, but I'm not memorizing. My memory is not doing very well. شكوت إلى وكيع سوء حفظي فأرشدني إلى ترك المعاصي. He says you have to let go, you have to leave sins. You have to purify yourself from sins. And then he says, وَقَالَ لِي بِأَنَّ الْعِلْمَ نُورٌ. He said to me, knowledge is a light, and the light is from God, and therefore the light of God will not go to the heart of a sinner. وَنُورُ اللَّهِ لَا يُعْطَى وَلَا يُهْدَى لِعَاصِي. It is a gift, that nur, that is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that guidance. In fact, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he says, لَيْسَ الْعِلْمِ بِكَثْرَةِ التَّعَلُّمِ. Seeking knowledge and having or acquiring knowledge is not based on reading a lot and learning a lot. Yes, that may be one of the means, but it is a light, the real knowledge, and the knowledge that leads to one fearing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاء. That one becomes fearful and conscious of his duty to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is, it is from Allah, it is from God, it is a nurun يقذفه الله على قلب من يشاء. The Imam said it is a light that comes from God on the hearts of those whom he wishes. So that is based on their purification. If the heart is purified, then they are granted that light from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are the khatarat that the Imam is referring to, that those thoughts that come to the heart and to the mind, and we need to distinguish between those. Now, how do I distinguish? How do I know whether this is Rabbani, Malaki, or wal-ayadu billah, Shaitani, for example, or even Nafsani? How do I know? One of the methods through which our scholars, they have taught us and used, they try to identify those different thoughts and ideologies, is which ones are that thought, that idea, that if you want to call it inspiration, is it the kind that is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? You present it and think of it as something that you want to face God on the day of judgment, presenting this, say it's a khatarat, which also good to mention this in dua, taqib salatul isha, we recite this, that وَإِنَّمَا أَطْلُبُهُ بِخَطَرَاتٍ. I seek my sustenance with some thoughts that come to my mind, بخطرات تخطر على قلبي. Some ideas, some thoughts come to my mind, to my heart, and I seek it. So that those khatarat, those thoughts, those ظنون in this case, if they are the kind that make you closer, get you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, would make you proud of the outcome on the day of judgment, then it is of the Rabbani or Malaki. Otherwise, if not, then it could be Nafsani or even Shaytani, the waswas from Shaytan. Ya man qaruba min khatarat al-dhunun. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is close in that sense. But however, he is وَبَعُدَ عَنْ لَحَظَاتِ الْعُيُونِ. He is far when it comes to the, not far distance-wise again, far from, the same level of thinking. We're speaking of the thoughts. He is near when it comes to dhunun, inspirations, guidance, thoughts. However, he is far when it comes to the thought of us seeing him. وَبَعُدَ عَنْ مُلَاحَظَةِ or عَنْ لَحَظَاتِ, the narrations are different, that he is far from the eyes to be able to see him, or to be able to recognize him, or to be able to even mulahada or lahadat is, and we use the term lahza, a moment, is basically to even think that I could look at him for a second. Even when it comes to the ayah, فَلَمَّا تَجَلَّى رَبُّهُ إِلَى الْجَبَلِ جَعَلَهُ دَكًّا. When they came to Musa ala nabina wa alayhi salam, and they said to him, أَرِنَ اللَّهَ جَهْرَةً, or let us see God, we want to see God. Such level of ignorance that they think with the physical eyes that God created, the limited eyes that God created, they want to see God. So he says, and then Musa alayhi salam, to basically try and please those people, he says, Arini anzur ilayk, Ya Allah, let me see you. Then he says, Lan tarani, you will never see me. ولكن انظر إلى الجبل. Look at the mountain. If it stays in its place, then you could see me. Then فَلَمَّا تَجَلَّى رَبُّهُ لِلْجَبَلِ. It is not that God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, displayed himself to the mountain. No, his qudra, one of his attributes being qudra, or some of his attributes, he displayed that in humbleness, and we read that in other ayat, in humbleness, recognition of the qudra, of the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the mountain crumbled. Not that for a split second the mountain could see God, for example. That is not, to think in that manner, we are in fact thinking of God as part of mujanasati makhluqat, the type or the kind of his creatures, or what he has created. وَبَعُدَ عن لحظات العيون. Inshallah, we'll continue. وعلم بما كان قبل أن يكون. Again, these beautiful rhyming words, yet the depth of them in terms of the meanings and the depth is just amazing, mind-blowing. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the wisdom to understand the words of the Ma'sumin, the infallible ones. الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآله. Thank you. Inshallah, we'll